Yes, we are still at the Nigerian Fintech Week. This is the 7th edition of Nigerian Fintech Week happening here in Lagos State, Victoria Island, Nigeria. So we are here with someone special, someone from the CBDC sector, in the person of Carmelle, Cadet, who is the founder and CEO of EMTECH. We are glad to have you, man.
Thank you very much. Always happy to talk to you.
And we are glad to have you here in Nigeria.
Yes,
Welcome.
Nigeria FinTech Week.
Thank you very much. So how are you doing and how is the conference going so far?
So far, so good. We've actually been making the rounds, talking to fintechs, seeing quite a bit of the ecosystem in Nigeria here. We had the opportunity yesterday. I moderated a panel, really talking about fintech, AI in Africa. And some of the key things that stood out to me around the conversation is around the need for not only talent, but data, computing power, infrastructure, and also the rules and regulation that govern AI. So it's been really good so far.
Okay, let's go down the lane. What inspired you to start EMTECH and how is your company driving financial technology innovation, particularly in emerging techs like Nigeria?
Sure. So I'm originally from Haiti. The concept of having access to financial products is something that's very passionate to me, very personal to me. When I migrated to the US, being able to see how access to capital and good financial market makes a difference in people's lives. So I always wanted to find a way to give better access to finance to people, but I didn't always know how to go about it. So I ended up at IBM, and that's where the love for big, complicated technology, global technology became interesting. And that's when I spent 10 years before I started EMTECH. So I started EMTECH, really the light bulb moment for me was the coming of age and the growing sense of blockchain technology. When we think about blockchain technology, and now fast forward to now, we're talking about tokenization, we're talking about distributed ledger. We understand it a bit more, but most people knew the first example of blockchain as Bitcoin. And but I really got interested into the technology, and I think there's a really big opportunity to rethink about the financial market infrastructure, about how money moves. And I had the opportunity to start thinking about how to help tokenize cash. Using blockchain technology to digitize cash became very interesting. And of course, who prints cash that is in paper today is a central bank. So we saw the opportunity to say, how can we make financial markets more inclusive, more resilient, by tokenizing cash? And that's when we started talking to regulators, to central banks specifically, because they print paper cash, on using modern technology to do that. And that's how EMTECH got started.
Awesome. So still on solutions EMTECH provides. EMTECH focuses on modernizing central banking with digital solutions. What are your thoughts on the future of CBDC in Africa and how can they improve financial inclusion?
Yeah. I always get the questions around CBDC, because that's where we started. One of the big component of CBDC, actually, now 5 years later, that we're learning is that for retail CBDC to be effective and to be successful, one of the best things that can happen in a country is to have a solid, trusted, you know, resilient ecosystem for fintechs. Why is that? Because when you think about CBDC, central banks are saying, okay, instead of providing paper cash, we're going to digitize cash. When you digitize cash, unless the central bank would create their own app to bring cash to you, you're going to need a fintech app or some form of banking app on where you can access your digital cash. So if you don't have fintech ecosystem, it becomes very, very difficult. And that's why the first product that we actually ended up introducing for central banks and fintechs is a regulatory sandbox. And the regulatory sandbox allows a regulator to start licensing fintechs while they are learning and still working on the regulatory framework. So what does that mean for CBDC? I think CBDC is becoming a no-brainer for central banks, to be honest. And I think it's also settling in pretty well with private sector version of tokenized money like stable coins. There's a lot of talk around tokenized deposits now. So you can have tokenized deposits, you can have tokenized cash, which is CBDC, and you can have stable coins, you can have tokenized securities. That's how the financial market is evolving right now around using certain capabilities, certain modern technologies to not only create a digital version of money, but how now do you make it accessible and how do you make sure that it is inclusive and that the financial market doesn't crash and doesn't get destabilized as you're actually transitioning into a whole new world of technology for finance.
Thank you very much. So, talking about the regulatory symbols, what has been your experience working with regulators in African markets?
Yeah, it's been a great experience to be honest with you because we did not actually start with the concept of regulatory sandbox the first time we started to central banks. This was a demand that we saw from central banks and saying, look, we know fintech is new. We don't usually regulate fintechs. We don't usually think about fintechs. They usually have to work with commercial banks. And now we think we have to regulate them or but we don't know how. And innovation usually moves faster than regulation, right? So as a regulator, you're not always going to keep up with where the innovation is happening. But I heard a great comment from Bank of Ghana at some point is, how close can you keep up, right? To innovation. And that's what the sandbox does. So now we have 6 central banks that are deploying our regulatory sandbox. Bank of Ghana was the second one, and then we started working with Central Bank of Nigeria. That's progressing very well. But as you can imagine, there's a difference between a large central banks and a smaller central bank, right? So Central Bank of Ghana is actually very much active. They have a fintech office that is dedicated and has been able to navigate the process for not only Sandbox but also CBDC. But what you also see is that Central Bank of Nigeria are really navigating through. This is a big change for them, right? Kind of how do they navigate, given how big the market is, given how impactful the market is, how you navigate doing something like that takes time.
Okay. Lastly, thank you very much. And so, if you're joining us, we are still talking about CBDC, and we have Carmelle Cadet, who's the CEO and founder of EMTECH. So, lastly, EMTECH is exploring in Nigeria's fintech ecosystem. How do you envision this? How do you envision collaborations that will drive digital finance? So, what partnership do you have, or you do you intend to have in Nigeria?
Sure. So we're actually launching 2 partner programs around the new product that we're introducing for fintechs. So we started working with central banks, like I said, on the regulatory sandbox, but we quickly realized how manual and how complex and fragmented the compliance process is for the fintechs. And most fintechs don't have a lot of money to, pay high legal fees or, hire expensive compliance teams at the beginning. Can you actually streamline some of the work? Can you simplify a license application? Can you simplify a regulatory reporting? Can you simplify certain things for fintechs and make it cheaper for them to comply, right? So with that, we're introducing Beyond Compliance, which is a platform that integrates your whole compliance management end to end. Today, fintechs are doing AML in one product. They need another product for transaction monitoring. They might be doing it manually. They have a different products for KYC. It's very fragmented, and then that's not even all the other regulatory requirements that they have to follow. So they are doing a lot of things manually that honestly does not help them manage their risk better. And that's why oftentimes regulators see them as high risk, right? They see fintech in general as high risk. So that's why we built Beyond Compliance to now help fintechs streamline, digitize, simplify their compliance management process so they can work with partners, they can work with a bank, they can work with the regulator, they can say, here's how we're complying to your regulatory requirements. So we introduced a partner program where we have a referral program for anyone who refers a fintech to us. to buy beyond compliance. Once they buy, then you get a $500 referral fee. This is something that we're launching on, actually doing Nigeria Fintech Week, for us to say, look, we know that your compliance is complicated, and we know that you know our fintech, we know that you know our fintech, we know that you know our fintech. Banks and partners and associations that have fintechs as part of their membership can actually take benefit of that.
Wow, awesome. And that $500 owner really think I'm next candidate. So thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. And
Of course, thank you.
With you. And I see you live from CoinNewsExtra, your leading blockchain and EMTECH TV in Africa. Bye for now.